Remakes. They're probably one of the most interesting concepts in gaming. Taking a game that was beloved and modernizing it for a new audience can make it either an amazing experience that truly elevates it to new heights and even brings in new fans to the franchise, or it can make it a mediocre cash grab that ends up insulting its original fans. Thankfully, I am very happy to say that Star Ocean Second Story R not only is a phenomenal remake, but I dare argue it raises the bar for what remakes should strive for. And I was able to experience this amazing journey thanks to the wonderful people at Square Enix giving me a review code for the game. So thank you everyone at Square. So what makes Second Story R so fantastic? What made this game so amazing that I am now a Star Ocean fan and very interested in checking out the rest of the series? Well, how about we get into that, shall we? Alright, we're going to start this off with the most obvious praise in the world. This game looks absolutely phenomenal. I've always been a fan of the 2D HD art style, and seeing what a AAA budget can do with that is always such a fucking delightful experience. I thought Octopath 2 and Sea of Stars were the pinnacle of the style, but Star Ocean blows both of them out of the water easily. So many awe-striking scenes and beautifully fluid character models turn pretty much every second of this game into nothing more than a visual feast for the eyes. And if that feast isn't enough, it's also accompanied by a fantastic soundtrack as well. It's got the kind of soundtrack that makes you just stop for a second to really take it all in. One time I just paused in a town for a few minutes just to absorb everything happening, letting the beautiful music fill my ears as I watched these gorgeous looking NPCs go about their day in this lovingly crafted town. It was the perfect definition of captivating. And if it wasn't just towns or NPCs that looked stunning, as basically everything else in this game was just drop dead gorgeous. From the expertly crafted dungeons to the jaw-dropping overworld, along with the new 2D art of all of the characters, to even the normal and special attack animations. Every single part of this game was handled with amazing levels of love and care. And since I brought up something related to combat, how about we go over that now? Believe me, I could gush about this game's graphics for literal hours, but god dang it, I want to get to talking about the combat so darn bad, so let's get to it. Since I was relatively new to the Star Ocean franchise, I didn't exactly know what to expect with combat. The most I had seen of it was through the eyes of my friends, Soy Senpai and Mad Kaiser, who both spoke very positively about these games. So I went in with some pretty decent expectations, and ooh boy were they met and more. The combat takes place in 3D style arenas as you run around and beat the ever-loving shit out of all of the approaching enemies. Each character has a normal attack button that deals out their own combo, and the singular combos can be combined together with special attacks you assign to your R1 and L1 buttons. Adding on to this is the assault actions, where by pressing a button on the D-pad to summon either a selected party member, or you can summon a party member from a past Star Ocean game to jump in and join the battle to keep your combo going and do a little extra damage. It's a nice combat system that seems rather simple at first glance, but is elevated by everything around it. For one, it's what you get out of it. Like most RPGs, you get experience points and money from battles, but in Star Ocean, you can also get BP and SP from it, and each has their own specific use. Using SP allows for that specific character to receive a permanent buff to their said characters. Some examples are effort, where leveling it up lessens the amount of experience you need to level up, which makes grinding less of a problem, especially in the late game when you combine it with chain battles that increase the experience you earn, and the train ability, where lowering your stats can get you more experience. Or, on the other side of the spectrum, you can use it on something like the knife skill, where every level up you get, your attack increases by 10, meaning you get even more of a boost when you level up. And now, we have the BP, which can be used to activate boosts during battle, like improving your guard break or giving you a power boost during the fight. Or, they can instead be spent to increase the power of your special attacks. Also, when you're leveling these up, your other passive buffs can gain boosts, making them even more effective. Speaking of buffs, in the bottom corner, you may notice a yellow gauge filling up. That yellow gauge also adds passive buffs, like increases to your attack and defense as the battle goes on. You increase it by breaking guards and killing enemies, but be warned, if any of your characters die, it gets set back to 0, which encourages you to play even better. And of course, its best aspect to me is the ability to not only play as all the other characters, but instantly swap between them in fights. It made battles immensely more exciting to go from a close-range fighter like Claude to blasting them with spells with Celine. I love swap mechanics. I gotta admit, it was at first a teeny bit overwhelming, considering it was my first real experience with Star Ocean's mechanics. But to be honest, once I started to get a feel for it, I started to absolutely love it. Got me really interested for when I finally tackle the other games in the future. But other than that, I don't got much else to say in terms of combat. It's just a lot of fun, plain and simple. So, how about now we talk about the story and characters? Both are incredibly solid. At first, I admit I wasn't a huge fan of Claude or Rena, but as the story went on and they grew from their shared experiences from both the story and utilizing the private actions, I enjoyed watching them more and more. And that also went for the rest of the unlockable party members, from the sexy witch Celine, who had some humorous interactions with cold badass Diaz, or the spunky inventor Pyrrhus, or youngster Leon, whose specialty is being the worst. I kid. But even with my minor dislike of Leon, I still think the entire cast was very well done. As for the story itself, I liked it. You see, the story is that there's this strange rock that came from the sky a few months back called the Sorcery Globe. That when it ended up falling on the planet that Claude had gotten stranded on, it started to cause everyone who came in contact with it to absolutely lose their shit. So Claude and Rena set off on a journey to figure out what the fuck is going on, each with their own separate motives. Claude to return home, and Rena to hopefully meet her real mom. It's a good foundation that lets characters have a goal to strive for, and serves as a very strong way for characters to grow on their own terms. And last, but most certainly not least, I need to bring up just how damn cool the game's secrets are. You see, when I was playing through 2, I played it in a fairly linear style. I played through most of the game and did the private actions whenever I could, but I didn't do them all the time. And when I reached the halfway point, I decided to check a guide out of interest to see what I was missing. Only to learn that I had missed out on a quest that if I had done it, I would have gotten a new character added to my party named Ashton. When I had heard that had actually blown my mind. Quests could give me more characters? I don't think I played many RPGs with that kind of reward. It made me want to replay the entire first half in order to get my hands on them, which is something I rarely ever say about any game. And that's about it for the game's pros. So how about we get to the cons, shall we? So, I'll be totally honest with you guys. When it comes to Second Story R, I actually don't have a gigantic amount of complaints about the game as a whole. It really does feel like Square went through this game with a fine-toothed comb to make it as polished of an experience as possible. But, you know me, I don't like lying to you guys, and I'm not going to say it's flawless just because I got it for free. I don't need people calling me a shill. I already get called worse on Twitter, but I would personally prefer not to be called that. And here's a few reasons why. Let's start with combat. Now, I've mentioned in pros, for the most part, combat is absolutely fantastic. But I do think it has some issues. For one, the team AI. Your partner AI in this game is kind of one of the most confusing things I've ever seen. At some points, they're incredibly helpful in battle and can keep up with you flawlessly. Other times, though, they just act so goofy. Like, at one point, I ended up dying to an enemy and they just kind of stood there like they crashed or something. I had to take control of Rena in order for them to start doing something to help Claude, because for some reason, no matter how many times I died, they never bothered to utilize any of the resurrection elixirs or smelling salts until I did it myself. Was there a setting I missed or something? The other issue I had is with the overabundance of particle effects. I've mentioned before how I'm not a massive fan of devs overusing particle effects in their games, as I felt like it just gets in the way after a while. I didn't like it in Octopath, I didn't like it in Pokemon Tournament, I didn't like it in Miles Morales, and I don't like it in Star Ocean 2. Sure, I admit it can be amusing to watch the screen become an insane clusterfuck of explosions and insanity. My ADHD brain won't deny that. Self-depression jokes is always funny. But it becomes kind of an issue when these explosions cause me to fucking lose sight of the enemy I'm trying to kill, which also ended up causing me to take damage from being unable to see anything. And I will admit, it frustrated me quite a bit. Lastly was how some of my partners attacked. Most of my characters just never dodged, and for full-fronting attacking characters, that got into an issue when I had to constantly spend resurrection elixirs to keep them alive. It got
irritating, and I really wished they had checked the attacking characters a bit more. But even with my complaints, I will admit that these are cons that even came with a few pros. The AA may not use items, sure, but I am just able to grab and use the items myself. And once characters like Rena learned revival spells, they became way more proficient at bringing me back to life. And while I admit the particle effects are a bit too much, it did teach me not to over-rely on special attacks and actively strategize to use them so they weren't getting in the way and helping me maximize damage.
And that pretty much just wraps up all of my cons with Star Ocean. So how about we finish up here and move on to our final thoughts.
Well, after that long journey, we finally reached the end, folks. Gotta admit, I was absolutely blown away by just how incredible this remake was. Every single thing that was added enhanced the entire experience with every minute I spent with it. And I can proudly say I am now a fan of the Star Ocean franchise, and I cannot wait to check out the rest of it for this channel. My final rating for this game is a phenomenal 9.5 out of 10, and I can easily say without a shadow of a doubt that this game has raised my bar for how remakes should be handled. And I hope Final Fantasy VII Rebirth does the same when it releases. That's all for this video, folks. If you liked it, make sure to like and sub down below. I want to again take the time at the end here to thank Square Enix once again for letting me have a review code for this game, and I hope we can get to work together sometime in the future. Until then, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.